This is fascinating.
It's what most people are
So
like.
we've sold car parts, we've sold clean up clothes, we've sold med device, and we've done construction, and we've also sold the craziest franchises I've ever heard in my life.
Exactly.
And you're not even 35 yet.
I was not even 31.
31. Okay, so it's the CU Parenting Podcast. My guest today is Laura Quick. So the great thing about this conversation, this format is, this is just a conversation like sitting at a coffee shop or something, just talking about things. Exactly. So why Laura? Laura is a business owner, but she also is a parent. And she has her life together. At least I think she does. So the other thing about this is, I don't know Laura real well at all. She was intro to me by Lindsay Miller, who we love, who was on a previous episode. And I love Lindsay. And I trust Lindsay. So if I love and trust Lindsay, that she says Laura's a wonderful woman, I'm going to believe her. So Laura.
That's high praise.
Exactly. High praise. Lindsay's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing I know about you is Good Grit Magazine.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay.
You're 39.
I'm 39, and I have
all
a
I
magazine.
know. Yeah, and you got kids.
I do, too.
Okay, so give me the quick version of like who you are from, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
The quickest version, I guess.
Nobody ever does that.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, my name is Laura Quick, and I was born and raised in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay.
I feel like I came out of the womb as a storyteller. I've just always loved stories. I think that curiosity is the coolest trait you can see in someone, because curious people are interested and not too consumed with being interesting. I had a son young. I was only 19 when I had my son, who is now 19, which is just the most scary thing of all kinds. Yes, it's so hard to watch someone be 19.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
I met Jesus super late in my life. I was around 30.
Oh, good.
Before I fell in love with Jesus. Well, I think Jesus had been knocking quietly, and I'd been like, that's so cute.
Yeah,
well,
that's so nice.
I'm busy, actually. So, and Good Grit, Good Grit Magazine, it was a manifestation, I think, of just kind of being chased down by God.
Okay, so tell me about Good Grit Magazine, because I know a little bit, but I know more than I let on, but like tell me about who it targets, all the good things.
So Good Grit, I started Good Grit in 2014 conceptually.
Okay.
And the whole purpose was, I kind of looked at the marketplace and was like, hey, I love solving problems. It's my favorite thing to do. And I saw I moved to Birmingham. I was from Savannah. So in Savannah, hospitality is
like... And why did you move to Birmingham?
Well, I had a long career of sales and marketing before I started my own company. And Birmingham was a bleeding market for the franchise big corporate company I worked for, and I would come here all the time, and I really liked it.
Okay.
And I knew it was much bigger than Savannah. Savannah had about 300,000 people at the time, and Birmingham was a known philanthropic community. I mean, Mountain Brook is huge, normally ranks in the top 5. I knew I wanted to do something eventually that kind of played in that arena.
Okay.
And I came here, visited here, loved it, moved here, single mom with my son.
Okay, so you moved here and you weren't married.
No.
So tell me when you moved back to Birmingham.
So I moved to Birmingham in 2013.
13. So you moved here in 13. You started the magazine in 14. Okay, so going back, so there's a lot of people out there that I hate to say it like this, but don't have the balls to leave a corporate job and start your own thing. So what were you doing? You said sales and marketing. What were you doing?
So I worked for a corporate company. I'll just start. So I dropped out of college when I found I was pregnant.
Right.
Surprise. Well, I guess I was 20 when I had Clay. So I found I was pregnant when I was 19. I was going into my junior year of college. And I was like, okay, well, I don't think I can do this.
Sure.
Moved home to be close to family.
Okay.
Had a baby. I was joking about this with somebody at lunch. I was like, I lied about my age. I literally said I was 27 from the time I was 20 until I turned 27. I'm like, gosh, what will I say now? Because I needed to have good jobs. And I would kind of white lie my way into the best job I could get, because I was a single mom. And so I always had jobs that were so out of my league, and I was one heck of a researcher.
That's the sales part of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so had some I think that my journey as a female in business is really unique because I had all men as leaders, and they were incredible men. like really
great.
good guys that saw my potential and really like invested in me and allowed me to the latitude to really kind of be the free bird that I was. Because the thing about entrepreneurship is, or even CEO life, is you have to have a streak of entrepreneur in you to even do it.
Absolutely, yep.
And so I think I always had men leaders who were like, okay, well, this girl is a born entrepreneur, and we're just going to kind of get out of her way and tell her what she needs to get done. And so in my sales career that I always lied to get jobs in, eventually I had enough experience where I didn't have to lie anymore. But I very quickly became, number one in the country, number one in 7 countries.
What were you selling?
Lord have mercy, anything. I mean, but
I can see pharma.
Well, you had to have a 4-year degree to do that, and I didn't have that.
Okay.
But I did do medical sales for a little while.
I can see that.
I moved into restoration sales, which was really unique. I worked in the car business for about 8 months and killed it. I was a number 1 service advisor for Land Rover in the country in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And I was like, man, I'm really good.
So service advisors, so like Susie comes in and because her brakes are squeaking, and you upsell the living snot out of her.
I'm like, Susie, you need a new engine, actually.
That's so awful.
It is going to be 25.
It's going to be 30 grand.
Actually, I left that business. I was doing really well. One, I worked 6 days a week, and it was very hard. And
every Saturday.
Every other Saturday, but still, it was a lot. I loved it because I got to drive a Land Rover because you got like a,
you had
I
to look
thought it was
the part.
so cool.
Sure, absolutely.
But I actually left because a guy came in who had, with the Land Rover, even really any BMW Land Rover products at the time before they were purchased by the Indian company, there's a black box. There's still a black box. They know exactly when a light comes on in your car. It's just like an airplane. So a guy came in, and I was like, sir, what happened? Because he's like, my coolant light came on and then just stopped working. And I was like, well, we check it. And he blew up his engine. And I'm like, how long had your coolant light been on? He was like, man, I don't know, like a day or so. I was like, well, it says here it had been on for 3 weeks. He needed a new engine. And his car would have been under warranty, but because he didn't do these certain things or whatever. Anyways, it was $38,000. And he gave me his American Express card. And I was like, I have to leave. I can't do this. This is like, how are you going to be that dumb? Come on. What you doing? So I went into outside sales. I had a guy I responded to just an ad. This is like before things were as digital as they are. And this guy was out of Jacksonville, Florida, and he did restoration dry cleaning, which I'd never even heard of. I thought
old clothes. Took old clothes and
not old, but like say, God forbid, you or someone you love had a house fire. We would come in and clean all the clothes and restore them where they wouldn't smell like smoke and they would not have soot on them, and it's like good for you, and you can put your kids back.
So not smoke, but like you could also do like hurricanes and
mold, all
that. Lord, that's such a great business.
Well, so he was like, listen, I think you could do this, and finally it was like, oh, you could have autonomy, you get a company car, like you could spend more time with your son.
Oh, he's given a company car for restoring clothes?
Well, here's the deal. My territory was going to be from Savannah, Georgia, all the way to Jacksonville, Florida. And then so I ran like 42 counties. And my first year, he said, hey, if you can just do $250,000 in sales, which sounded like a lot.
Sounds like a lot.
You go to get a dry cleaning, it's like no more than $100. That's you and your wife got all your stuff. And I'm like, $250,000. And he's like, well, that's what the guy before you was doing. You can do that. And I was like, oh, well, if that person was doing it, I'll do it. I did $750,000 my first year. So I was literally like number 1 salesperson first year in the country. And then I just gradually grew up in that business. And so a lot of people around the country knew who I was.
In the restoration clothes business? Not
just clothes. I moved into construction. So I worked for a $50 million construction company. Building out their marketing and sales program, referral systems, had a great time doing it. And I eventually was like, I want to do my own thing, and knew I could start a consulting firm, going and consulting for other businesses who needed to build sales teams, who needed to build sales systems. It was a pretty, like fly by the seat of your pants, but I had enough experience to know like, hey, here was the path to success that I took.
Piecing together the different things that you learned along the way from different people. This is where where I think people discount having a boss leader ahead of them that's really, really good, and not squeezing that orange as much as you can while you're there.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I had that boss that I left in the dry cleaning world. He was like, "I'll start any business you want to start. I'll start it with you." Like, he just believed in me. And he is still a great friend and mentor. I call him when I'm like, "What should I do about this?"
Yeah.
And then the next guy that I worked for was also amazing. Really incredible guy. I'd been in construction, graduated from Auburn for 50 years, and trusted me to come in and build a program he'd never had before with sales and marketing and a referral system with insurance companies. Did that for a little while, and then was actually poached by another corporate company out of St. Louis.
You were?
I was.
So you have moved around with what's your son's name?
Clay.
You've moved around with Clay all around the coast, St. Louis.
Well, I didn't move to St. Louis.
Yeah,
I just had to be there a week every 6 weeks.
Okay.
But that was the first national position I'd ever held. So that was a national sales manager position that I was able to take, and it was really cool. And that was selling franchises. And
What franchises?
They're called 1-800 Board Up. It's pretty obscure, but it's construction companies all over the country would buy a 1-800 Board Up franchise so that they would have a relationship with it's kind of a nonprofit arm for their for-profit company. And you go and build relationships with fire chiefs. We hired retired fire chiefs, and those fire chiefs would build relationships with the firehouses so that if there's a fire, regardless of the insurance status, that construction company would board up the house for free. And if they had insurance, they would bill, but the house has to be boarded up. It's mandated by the cities and the counties. And when they did that, we created kind of a system where we would bring all of these different collaborators, like, hey, we can mitigate this loss for you. It's a very scary thing to lose everything like that in fire.
Yeah.
And so I developed a heart for that give back component because I was on the front line of that. I got to go to these houses and love on people.
See the people. God.
And to people losing their spouse in a fire, their animal they loved, even sometimes children. I mean, it was very devastating. But to give them a little piece of comfort with a teddy bear or fresh clothes to connect them.
And it sounds like also saving them. I mean, it sounds really like you're saving them money. I would think.
Well, I think we did a really great job at that company of vetting to make sure that these were not like unethical companies. You could not buy a franchise without being a really ethical company. So you were there to serve the people, and knowing that if you served well, you would have a better shot at getting that business if they were like rebuilding their house or they did have insurance. And so it's kind of, there's some selfishness in that, but
no question. But for the most part, it's good.
Right, really good. So how does a girl in the fire restoration start a magazine?
This is fascinating.
It's what most people are
so
like.
We've sold car parts, we've sold clean-up clothes, we've sold med device, and we've done construction, and we've also sold the craziest franchises I've ever heard in my life.
Exactly.
And you're not even 35 yet.
I was not even 31 yet.
31 yet.
I was 31 when I started.
Okay, so you're where are you living when you're working for the person in St. Louis?
So
live in Savannah?
I was Savannah. So it was Savannah to right outside of Atlanta, LaGrange, Georgia for the
I know exactly where it is.
And then I was able to move back home.
To Savannah.
And then decided to move to Birmingham because I had a franchise in Birmingham that was
Board
up.
Okay.
And I would come here and I'm like, dang, this is cool.
Yeah.
More people, more opportunity. I also
But not Atlanta more.
Right. Atlanta was overwhelming. I'd done work in Atlanta, business trips there for years and years, and I just never felt like this is where I want to raise my kids.
I lived there 2 years. I mean, I agree with you. Yeah.
And so I just was like, I think this is where I'm supposed to be, and I really can't explain it. But
I get it.
I think I'm supposed to be here. So moved to Birmingham, started my first consultant business, which I say that's what all sales and marketing people do.
That's it. So let me go back. You left the board up company and said, hey, thanks but no thanks. I'm going to start my own deal. Okay, so here's the the question I have.
Okay.
This is what everybody asks me. I got asked this yesterday, 2 days ago. So crazy. Because there's a guy in Tennessee, great friend of mine. He's got a 9-to-5, but he's got another business that, he grossed right at $1 million this year. Okay. So the transition from getting a consistent salary, even if it is sales, okay, how did you transition from that into the consulting part?
Honestly, I will say that it felt a little forced when I left that company. I was the only female serving on an all-male board. I was working with a predominantly male. And when I said I've had the luxury, where I've met a lot of young women who have not had the luxury of having strong men leaders
Sure.
who believed in them, that wasn't my story. I had strong men leaders who were like, yeah, girl, get it. You know,
Yeah.
like, we see you and we're
Right.
here for it. But at that last company, and it's funny because Michael, who was my boss there and the owner of that company, reached out to me a couple years ago and was like, I want to apologize. I should have fought for you.
Wow.
And which is like so
Yeah, that's
sweet.
great. Yeah.
And he's still a friend and a mentor too. But I left there feeling like I had to. Like, there was just some older men who were really they did know a lot more than me in so many ways. I was 29,
Yeah.
you know, and I was like, well, I get it. You know, it's hard to take the 29-year-old
Sure.
seriously, but I felt like the door was closing and it was just time to leave.
Like, okay, so like no more upward movement, or like I'm stagnant, like I can't grow anymore.
Like, I believe that you know it's time to leave when your voice isn't heard anymore, and it doesn't really matter what you do or how you position it. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and when people can't hear you anymore, that does not mean you should scream.
Sure.
That means you should say, cool, maybe I need to
Yeah.
find a new table to sit at where people can hear me.
Gotcha.
And so I decided, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'm just going to consult for a little while. I had so many people in the industry who knew me. And so that was just easy. Now, when I'm asked the question, how do you take your side hustle to a full-time gig?
But you didn't have a side hustle.
No, I didn't, but I'm a risk taker. I believe risk takers always win.
Okay, so let's talk about the question that no one wants to ask, but has to ask. Okay, so financially.
Single mom.
Okay, single mom, you got a kid. How much were you making at board, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where were you at from a salary / sales?
Okay, around 200.
Around 200. Okay, so you leave a $200,000 income and go to do this consulting.
Yeah.
Did you have like money set aside to where that you could lean on?
I did, but I also think that it's funny because that was the most money I'd ever made.
Sure.
You know, and I was really proud to be in my 20s and make that kind of money, especially I wasn't college educated, you know, I didn't have a college degree. But I will tell you this, my base salary there was $25,000. So I'm just not scared of hustling.
Sure.
And I've never really been scared of hustling. And, you know, I have an investor that once, who invested in Good Grit, and he did it kind of via text. Like, this was like a big life decision for me and my whole team. Like, am I going to make payroll this week? And he once said, yeah, we're in. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have to call or at least, you know, meet or at least call somebody when you're saying something like that. This is life-changing stuff.
Sure.
So I called him. This was later, once we had a real relationship, and I said, Jay, have you ever been hungry? And he was like, no.
Yeah.
And I said, I have.
Yeah.
So once you have failed enough and you know what it's like to be at the lowest level, you're just not really scared to go back there because you know you can build it back again. And so for me, yes, I was a single mom, but I was also so burnt out on being in an airplane and flying all around. And I feel like there was a lot of God tugging at my heart too, of just being like, hey girl.
And you didn't know Jesus at the time?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's very perspective, like
sure.
looking back.
Yeah, no doubt.
Way.
Yeah.
But
well, I'd also think too that you leaving a $200,000 job is the Holy Spirit saying, hey, this is something. Yeah.
And a lot of other things happened. I mean, there was a ton of stuff that went on during that time that was just like, had to be God. There's just no other way to explain it. But I started a consulting firm and rented a tiny little like 250 square foot office in Mountain Brook. And I was nestled between two therapists, which is hilarious because mental health is like a huge part of my journey. But the therapist that used to be in my office was a subscriber to the New York Times. So I got a New York Times one day, was doing really well consulting. I actually called my brother and was like, you have to move here and like be my CFO. And he goes, Laura, I work at a bank. I'm like, so you're qualified.
Yeah,
exactly. He was like, that is not what that is. But long story short, I got that New York Times and I was reading it. And it really, quite frankly, pissed me off because I was like, why is New York doing such a great job of telling this story? It was about the food revival in Birmingham. It was talking about the food movement and hospitality movement that's happening in Birmingham. This was 2013. And I was like, I think I have to start a magazine. Now, every person that I told that to was like, my best friend, Megan, was like, do you even read magazines? I was like, Megan, it's not time for negativity.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, so hold on one second. How long have you been doing the consulting thing?
Like a year.
So you gotten a pretty good...
Oh, I was stacking.
Doing good.
So good.
Okay, so you were doing good there.
And it was like a one-woman show. I really didn't need much.
Yeah.
You know, I made my own
It's
schedule.
no overhead.
No overhead.
No overhead.
It's really like
$1,000 a month for your office.
Yeah.
If that.
$500
$500 a month for your office.
Yeah, nothing.
Oh my gosh.
It was
Okay.
so great.
So you're doing this a year, and then you decide, hey, I need to start a magazine.
Well, I saw a hole in the market. I really felt like once I read that article in the New York Times, it pissed me off, and I looked at the landscape and I thought, okay, so there's a Southern Living.
Yep.
There's like your grandma's magazine,
Sure.
right? Which is awesome.
Yeah.
I
I love that magazine.
Southern
I get
Living.
it.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And then there was Garden and Gun.
Yep, I get that one too.
Great magazine.
Yep.
From Charles.
Not as much anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
So they changed editors, and it's not as good.
Okay. Yep.
Oh, there's another conversation. Go
Yes. And what I saw this legacy type magazine.
Sure.
That was like, what kind of flour do you use for that cake?
Yeah.
And what kind of place settings should you make?
Blue Blood
right?
Southern.
Yep.
Yep.
And then I saw a very aspirational Southern culture magazine. I didn't have a lot of friends, probably no friends, that were taking a private plane on a duck hunt.
No.
Right?
Me neither.
I also didn't have any friends that had $40,000 shotguns.
Nope,
You know, and
me
so
neither.
there was a lot of aspiration to Garden and Gun, but what I didn't see was I didn't really see a lane for inspiration. How could we leverage our stories as Southerners?
Okay.
How can we show the progressive side of Southern culture, tell stories that inspire the human spirit to persevere? And that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
So I built a business plan, and I had to go and basically unpaid internship for a friend of mine in Savannah who had a magazine called South. His name's Michael. He's a great guy. I was like, hey, I want to start a magazine. And he was like, oh, you moved to Birmingham. That's great. They don't really have any good local magazines. I was like, yeah. I don't want it to be local. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, I'm going to compete with Garden and Gun. And he laughed at me.
Okay.
And he was like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And I was like, well, I'm going to try.
Try, yeah.
And I said, so he always would be like, come help me with my sales team. Because he's like incredible creative, but always struggled with sales. And I was like, I'll help you with your sales team if you will open your playbook and let me understand how you're running this business.
So like when you say open your playbook, you mean the nuts and the bolts of
Yeah.
pages and colors and
Like
who
everything.
prints your magazine?
Exactly.
Like-
Distribution,
like
circulation.
The things that you don't even think about.
Well, timeline. How long does it take you to do this from start to finish? And who are the moving parts you have
Right.
to have in order to do it? How do you find writers? How do you find
Photographers.
photographers? How do you find illustrators? All
Who's
those
your
things.
editor? Oh gosh.
Yes.
Okay.
And he said, yeah.
Okay.
And
So
so-
so old school, just barter system.
And
Teach me, I'll give you.
So I would run my consulting firm, and I did this for 2 months. Run my consulting firm on Mondays, schedule it, drive to Savannah on Tuesday, leave my child with my brother, drive to Savannah Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, work, drive home, work at the consulting firm on Friday, just so I could build a business plan. I did that for 2 months. It was terrible.
What was terrible about it?
Well, I think that I lived most of my life until I was probably 32. I started to unravel the survival mode mentality. I had been surviving as a single mom and a hustler, like I
Yeah.
like to say, that girl who would just like grind, I could do
Yeah.
anything. And I was sacrificing so much of I was giving the best things I had to offer to clients and the people, and I would give the worst parts of myself to my son and my family.
Okay, so let's stop there for a second.
Okay.
So do you feel like, and this is a hard question, okay? Do you feel like you were a good mom from the time he was born until that 2016, 17?
I wasn't. And I have had to, he and I have had extensive, heart-wrenching conversations about me apologizing.
Yeah.
Clay got saved at Church of the Highlands in front of me before I did. There's a lot of pressure when you move to Alabama. People ask you top 3 questions. Where do you go to church?
Who are you married to?
Hey, well,
Yeah.
maybe. Who do you root for?
Yeah.
Alabama, Auburn, right? And then what do you do?
Yeah.
And I really couldn't answer that church question, and that
funny.
was pretty important. But started taking him, and I've had a lot of conversations with Clay, just apologizing for all the things I really messed up, and then explaining to him like, hey, the way I did it sucked and wasn't right, and now I know better, so I'm going to do better.
Sure.
And here's what that's going to look like for us.
Okay.
And so, no, I wasn't a good mom, and I think I was starting to realize that even when I decided to leave my corporate life.
How old was he?
So,
When you figured out, like, hey, I'm not doing a really good, I'm killing it over here, but I'm not doing a good job at being a mom. How old was he?
Clay was, I think when I started waking up, Clay was probably around 11.
Okay, so not super old, but missed
old.
a lot of years.
A lot of years to sacrifice by me just not knowing, And I think that epiphany, that kind of wake up and that unraveling of the system I'd been using to just like push myself to complete burnout.
Yeah.
And then like take a complete day to just like do nothing so I could recharge a little bit, and then still not give the best parts of myself to the right people.
Yeah.
So I decided to start this magazine, do the consulting thing. I'm doing the consulting thing, learning about magazine business, build a business plan, talk to one of the young women that I had trained for a company I consulted for, who was kicking butt. I mean,
where was she?
So she was at a bar.
No, like working. Where was she working?
She was working for a local company here.
In Birmingham. Okay,
in Birmingham.
Good.
Yeah, she was doing dry cleaning restoration, and she was killing it. But I met her. She was a bartender. Bartenders are amazing.
They're wonderful.
Really good bartenders are, one, they understand boundaries.
Yes.
Right? They're going to give you enough, but they're not going to give you too much.
Nope.
They're not going to take any crap, right? And they make incredible business women in sales.
And they read the freaking room.
Exactly. Social intelligence. They have a ton.
It is so hard these days. So like we've got 3 that we use. Okay? Brad, Justin, and Haley. Okay? All of them are incredible.
Yeah.
If they need full-time jobs, they'll figure out a place to
Oh, literally.
But like they just get it. And I've had some that don't. But you're right. What is it? You just think it's the reps? Because I think like it's just the reps of like meeting someone, talking, figuring out where it's going, dropping it if it's not good, going on if it is good.
So I think it's that, yes. And I bartended for years. Like that's how
I can see that.
I would totally make money. When my son was with his dad, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to pick up a side hustle.
Sure.
I think it's the reps. I think it's high interaction, and like you are dealing with the best of people and literally the worst of people.
Sure.
And it could happen in the same sitting.
Absolutely.
You could literally have the coolest, most down-to-earth, coolest person you've ever met sit down at your bar, and by the time you have to have him escorted out, he could be the worst person ever.
All with one question or one memory or whatever.
Exactly.
You're right. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
So I asked her, I was like, I'm building this business plan. I'm going to start this magazine. Do you know anybody that might be like interested in being an investor? She was like, I know a guy that I think that's in the magazine business, and he's like super wealthy. And I was like, give me a meeting.
Yeah.
She was like, no problem. So I deliver the most expensive business plan of all time because it has to be like super great stock, paper friendly, like all that, because it's a magazine.
Yeah.
To this guy's mailbox like 3 times because he's like, I didn't get it. I like to do impressions of this guy because he's awesome. So finally he gets one, and he meets me at the Garage Cafe in Birmingham in the back. And when I walk in the back of the back patio, he's smoking a cigarette and he's drinking a martini, and he's got to be like in his 70s. I don't know where in his 70s. And he's like, I sit down and he said, Laura, I'd like to start this meeting by saying I do not invest in anything but myself, but I especially do not invest in magazines or restaurants. And I was like, okay, well, this is going great. And I thought, hey, I'm here. I'm going to pitch.
Yeah,
this is what I do, right?
Yeah.
I'm a known like salesperson, relationship builder. What do I have to lose?
Right.
Nothing. He's already said no.
Yeah, he's already said no.
And then I found out he loved gardening up, and he ran into his mailbox to get it. And I thought, but don't you wish there was something a little more authentic, a little more gritty, a little more like, hey, I've fallen a lot. I've failed a lot, and here's what success looks like. And then he started talking about his dad, how his dad was a door-to-door salesman, and how much he believed that story really hadn't been told a lot.
Sure.
And that was Elton B. Stevens Jr. He wrote me my first check. He said yes that night.
Wow.
I asked him for a certain amount of money, and he said, that's never going to be enough. You're going to run out in a year. And I said, no way. I'm a great salesperson. I'm going to make this work.
Yeah.
We ran out in a year. He was right. He gave me $50,000 more than what I was asking for. Took the same amount of equity. I still ran out in a year. I walked into...
Okay, so go back.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people, myself included. Mm-hmm. What did you spend the money on?
So here is what I know now that I didn't know then.
Okay.
I had built a business plan based off of what I had seen to be true about the industry on that snippet of time that I had spent in Savannah. 2 months. Right? I spent 2 months. Now, obviously, 2 months is not enough time, but it is. I did a ton of research on what was working for other magazines. And if you look at a magazine masthead, so who works there, who's a contributor, it's hundreds of people.
Tons.
Right? So many people. I decided we needed this skeleton crew.
Yeah.
And we would outsource a lot of, all of the writing, all of the photography, all of that. So we built these budgets. It's the print that kills you. Print is, we'll spend $30,000 to $40,000, $50,000 on print per issue. And that'll just take you out, right? And
so in magazines, let me ask this question because I don't know anything about magazines.
Right, neither did I.
In magazines, yeah, obviously with all the money. In magazines, so Thomas is a subscriber. Thomas pays, let's just say $30 a year.
Yeah.
40, I don't know what the number is. $30 a year.
Let's call it $30.
Okay. That's just like a line item. You don't make any money on subscribers.
You lose money on subscribers and you lose money on shelves for a long time.
Okay, on shelves. Mm-hmm. How does that work?
So
who do you sell that to?
So you get a broker normally. Right?
Okay, so they got to take a freaking cut.
And it is a very rudimentary, old school business that has been doing it this way forever. So my first broker, he's a great guy, John. He's a local guy. He's amazing. And he believed in us.
Yeah.
And he pitched me and got us in a ton of places. Anyway, he was like, I said, first issue, I was like, listen, the goal is to get in Whole Foods. It's very important to me. That's where my people are. They care about these kind of stories. He laughed, and he's like, not going to get in Whole Foods. And I was like, okay. First issue goes out. So you do strategic mail outs when you're trying to get subscribers. Subscribers matter. So a lot of different things matter, but really what you're selling to an advertising partner are impressions to the right kind of people that care about their brand.
Impressions to the right kind of people that care about their brand.
The same way that if you were to tell me you needed to market your business, my first question would be, what problems are you solving? Okay. And then if you tell me what problems you're solving, I'll say, cool, who are you solving them for?
Okay.
We'll get to that in a second. So fast forward, I say I want to go in Whole Foods. John's like, that's hilarious. Nobody gets in Whole Foods. They pick you. I was like, no problem. We do a strategic mail out. Some guy who lived on 30A was on the board of Whole Foods, got the first issue, ordered 1,000 copies to go in 100 Whole Foods second issue.
Wow.
When I tell you there was favor on this thing from the beginning, and almost like the cockroach that just won't die because we've had plenty of opportunities to die. And my second investor.
Okay, so what was the circulation?
The circulation, when we first came out, our circulation hasn't really changed. We've just got better at honing in on that audience.
Birmingham to what?
So we are in currently 12 states, the lower states. We're in about 1,500 retailers. So you'll find us at Publix and Whole Foods and Targets and lots of Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, that kind of thing. And then you'll also find us in 25 of the top hotels. You'll find us in every room. And we get a lot
Every room?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you get a lot of impressions that way more than you would sitting on your coffee table where I may get 4 to 10.
Okay.
So
you're still not making any money on selling them to, because you said you lose money on shelves.
You lose money.
Why do you lose money on shelves? If you got 1,500 locations at X number of magazines per location, do you give them away or do you lower less than cost?
So this is the way it works. Let's say 10 magazines go on the shelf at 100 Whole Foods.
Okay, 1,000 magazines.
Okay, at Whole Foods, they need you to sell 80% of those in order to keep you on their shelf. The average rack rate is 20%. Most magazines only sell 20% of what they put out. So what I'm saying, listen, kids, do not start a magazine.
So, okay, so here's why that makes no sense, though. If it's only 20%, why are there any magazines on there? Because, like, why would they not get rid of all the magazines or a lot of the magazines if they're only selling 20 or 30% of the magazines?
Well, when you go to Whole Foods, you see they don't have a lot of magazines because they're only selling magazines that sell, okay? When you go to Barnes & Noble, they're selling every dang magazine.
Every magazine.
They don't care, right? For them, it's about volume. For Whole Foods, it's about culture. It's about does this match my shopper? Do they care?
Yeah.
And so, anyways, we went in Whole Foods. That was a big, huge win. We ran out of money less than our first year. We were running out of money. I go to pitch to Birmingham Budweiser, and I'm like, to sell ads.
Ads, yeah.
And he took the meeting. The owner took the meeting. I get in. I'm sitting in this big conference room. I've got one of my sales reps with me, and I'm like, here's our media deck. And he was like, oh, are you trying to sell me advertising? And I was like, you took this meeting. He was like, yeah. And he said, are you raising capital? I'm more interested in that. And I was like, I'm telling you, I was on my knees praying. Like, I had not told anybody. We didn't have a pro forma ready. We were not ready to really raise capital, but we were going to have to, or we were going to be shut down in 1 year.
Right.
And I said, are you serious? And he goes, yeah, my wife likes your magazine.
Okay, let me stop. How are you paying your bills? Are
Well,
you still
so-
consulting?
So I always kept a client, or at least, but really I got super scrappy. I mean, I moved into a wooden bedroom apartment that we call so lovingly the Harry Potter apartment because his bed was in a closet.
Nice.
He went to boarding school in Coleman, which is why we live in Coleman now. A lot of the reason. My husband's from there too. We'll get to that in a
Okay.
second. And he was boarding 5 days a week and would be home on the weekends so that I could travel and get things done. And he was going through puberty, and I had no tools for that. I knew he needed strong men in his life. I didn't know any of those. And so we were doing what we had to do. And when Jay said, hey, I'm interested, like, get me a pro forma, I was like, oh my God, we have to get a pro forma. I don't even know what to say. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is the truth though. It's a 10-year game at minimum for magazines. A 10-year, you have to have enough money or enough scrappy fortitude to figure out how to make it 10 years to even become a legacy brand. By the way, here's the other thing that happened. My excellent sales skills that I thought were going to help us stay afloat with advertising, most of the advertising partners that I wanted to sell to would say to me, and I quote, come back when you've been in business for 2 years. Oh, cool. Well, I can wait that long, said no entrepreneur ever, right? And so it was a really hard business, and we've now made it for 8 years, and we've been successful and profitable for the last 2, but it took
6 years to make any money.
Well, we did some break evens, but yeah, we lost money. And here's the deal.
Here's the difference in the two of us. Like, I can't wrap my mind, like, we've been profitable since day one.
Right, which is the dream, right?
Like,
That's
I can't wrap my mind around 6 years of break even or losing
Well,
money.
it's kind of a nonprofit, really, when you think of it, right? But here's the deal, and I think about that. My husband's like you, who never started a business. Shane likes to make money in his sleep.
Sure,
like, he wants to
me
make
too.
more money when he's sleeping than when he's awake. That was like something he said to me that I was so appalled by when I was younger. How dare you say that? I'm doing meaningful work here. And he would be like, I don't care how meaningful it is. If you don't make money, this is called a nonprofit. You should
Sure.
start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
But this is before we were married, when he was just a guy that I really, really, really liked, and he really liked me, but I was really lost and he was really lost. But I think that, that was the thing that would keep me up at night, but it was always like, I'm almost there. And when I say we weren't making money, I was being paid. So I was getting paid by the company. The issue is my investors weren't making money. The great news is they were both B with a billionaire. So they love this tax write-off they're getting, right? So they got a tax write-off for years and years. And, and now I was able to buy Eltonel in 2018, which was amazing. Yeah, so
Wow.
things turned around.
Yeah.
I was able to buy Eltonel. I was able to onboard a new investor who really brought something to the table that allowed me to go do something I'd wanted to do for a long time.
Okay, let's go back.
Okay.
So you buy out one of the investors. What was the windfall/event that allowed you to do that financially? Because that's a huge deal.
So I think I need to go back a little bit in the story. In 2016, Well, I met my husband. I think I should tell you that part of the story. So my son and I were going for a hike in Lithia Springs to meet some friends. So we're on I-20, and we get behind this guy going fast, and I'm really mad at Clay. Clay's my son. I'm really mad at him because he was late, wouldn't get out of bed, and I thought we were going to miss the hike. Like, we're going to have to do our own hike because we won't be there. They'll leave you. And we get behind this guy going fast. And he gets off on exit 179 to get gas, and I get off behind him because I'm like, I need gas too. My son and I were in a convertible. We're like dancing, having a great time. And this guy just kind of walks over to me, and he was like, "You from Birmingham?" And I'm sure he was a little concerned at Clay's health, you know, like safety, because we were like really having a great time in the car. And I was like, kind of, I'm from Savannah. He's like, "What do you do?" I was like, "I do marketing." This is like at the beginning of the magazine. I was about to start it. I thought I was going to start it. And I was like, "What about you?" And he's like, "Oh, I do marketing too." And I was like, "Cool." Well, I didn't really know what he did, but he was telling me about clients he had. I had this vodka company that I repped, and he's like, "Hey, we're looking for a vodka company for this event that I do." He's like, "Can I get your business card?" And I was like, "I don't do business cards." He gave me the worst business card I'd ever seen in my life. I knew he did not do marketing. I was like, "Buddy."
Yeah.
We go to lunch. Well, we don't go to lunch. Hold on. Keep going. What?
So the guy stops you on the interstate.
No, he didn't stop me on the interstate.
But like you get off the exit.
Yeah.
You get off behind him. He starts hitting on you with your son in the car.
Well, Clay went inside to get donuts because that's very Clay.
Sure.
But
this is your future husband.
This is my future husband.
This
and
is
I
bonkers.
want to say to you that it was not creepy. And if you know,
it sounds super creepy.
It's not. If you knew Shane, you would know he's the least likely candidate.
If I meet Shane, I will have to ask this question of like, bro,
what were you doing? When you meet him, you'll be like, what? That guy walked up to you? There's no way.
Okay.
Well, again, talk about God. So he gives me this terrible business card. I reached out to him and was like, "Hey, let me know if you," because like at this time, I'm still having a like side hustle. I have this vodka company out of Mississippi. He says he's got this big event. Well, that big event is called Rock the South. My husband owns Rock the South.
Gotcha. Okay.
We didn't say that then. And I was like, so he called me and he's like, "Hey, I'd like to get like whoever on your team and whoever on my team, we need to go to lunch." And I'm like, "Okay, great." So he's asking me those good old Alabama questions. Where to go to church?
Yep.
And I was like, "Oh, I don't go to church. I don't even believe in God."
Yep. Oh, okay.
And he was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh.
Similar.
Okay.
And he goes, I said, "What about you?" And he's like, "Well, I do church for a living." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm the world's largest Christian music promoter." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "I don't even know what that means."
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, most people don't, but you know, I put on concerts, Christian concerts. And I do them all over the world. I've been on every continent."
Huh.
He's like, we sell millions of tickets a year." And I'm like, "Okay, well, this has been really cool talking to you.
Yeah.
I'll never talk to you again.
Yeah.
Bye." Well, my husband was the first person to say that shame is like shit on your shoes, and God doesn't want you walking around with that.
Nice.
And it wrecks me.
Yeah.
Well, one, how dare you say I have shame?
Yeah, exactly.
And he was like, "You're riddled with shame."
Yeah.
This is after I told him all of the reasons why he could never, ever be interested in me. Here they are. Here's all the most shameful, horrible things that I've ever done in my life. And a guy like you who says you couldn't have a glass of wine and a photo with you if we were ever to date, I'm like,
yeah,
honey, this ain't happening because I'm going to drink wine. And
Yeah.
I am not going to pretend I don't, okay? So, and he said that to me, and I think, like, again, God was just chasing me down.
Sure.
And Shane was a big part of that. So that happens. I start the magazine. We're not profitable. I onboard a new business partner. And from the moment I onboarded Jay and Elton loved that they were both in. They both had skin in the game. So they both believed. I mean, if you ask Elton right now, "Why'd you invest in Laura?" He'd say, "I just believed she was a tenacious businesswoman. She was going to get it done." And I think Jay would probably say the same. But Elton around year 2 was like, "Well, when are we going to sell it to Garden and Gun?" And I was like, "Elton, what are you talking about? Garden and Gun is not buying this business." And around year 3, he went through a divorce. And was like, "I want you to buy me out." I'm like, "It's worth less than what you put in right now.
Yeah.
Like, we're in the negative. I can't buy you out. Buy you out with what?" And so I had convinced Jay to
Who's
help.
Jay?
Jay is my other business partner.
Okay.
I had to convince him to help me buy him out. But then Shelly came on. So I met Shelly at a editor's luncheon. She had a jewelry line. Her name's Shelly Brown. She was the most incredible human I'd ever met my whole life. She had literally little burgers on the Bloody Marys that she was serving at the editor's luncheon. I'm like, are we about to be best friends?
Yes.
Like, is this happening?
Burgers on drinks.
I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'm in. Whatever you're selling, I'm buying it. She had 20 editors there. She didn't talk to anybody else. We just like literally buddied up in the room. And I was like, you should guest edit the magazine next year. She's like, I don't even know what that means, but I'll do it.
I'll do it.
She's the most talented, creative thinker I've ever met. She's a Renaissance woman. She can do anything. She's a single mom of 5 kids. Well, she wasn't a single mom at that time. She was married. Her and her husband at the time were like, hey, we want to invest in the magazine. And let me tell you, I needed that investment so much. I needed Elton to go away. I needed to buy a house so I could be with my kid again. Like all of these things. But I now had the Holy Spirit, and I also had discernment that I'd never had before. And something in my gut said, do not take that money. I needed that money so bad. And I told Shelly, who I love so much, I was like, this is not personal. I just don't think this is the right move for the business. Now, they were going to put me on a salary. I was going to have health benefits. I was going to be able to keep my team, run it through their system. I mean, this is the dream.
But they were going to own you.
They were going to own me. I did not want to be owned. And hey, guess what? I had already taken bad money because I knew what it felt like to have Elton go, oh, we're going to sell this thing to God. And God. I'm like, stop saying that. No one's buying us.
Wow.
Like, it's fine. So Elton was awesome because he believed first, but he wanted something that was unrealistic for the trajectory we were on.
Sure.
Fast forward, Shelly goes through a divorce, a little bit messy. And the first thing she says to me, now that by this time, she's going through divorce and Shane and I are engaged. And so we're getting married and she's getting divorced. And I learned so much about sitting in a valley with a friend. I believe those years in the valleys of Good Grit actually built me. I really became that brand.
Sure.
Like, what does it like look like to really fail and like learn how to do that with like a smile and to know that the only way you fail is if you took a risk, right? And to keep grinding, to keep climbing, to keep raising up young creatives who love the work but would graduate and leave you because you couldn't pay them enough,
you
right?
Pay them enough,
And Shelly came along, and when she was going through divorce and Shane and I were getting married, she said, the first thing I'm going to do when I get divorced is invest in Good Grit. And I was like, okay.
I already told you no.
No, I told her husband no.
Gotcha.
I told
that's
her
what I figured.
yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll die. I just don't even know what we'll be able to do.
Yeah.
Shelly joined the team in January of 2019. I wrote Elton a check, got him out, pulled her in. She took over the creative side of the magazine.
So she's part owner, but that was your
She was
ticket.
the first active owner that I'd ever had.
That was your ticket to get him out of there. And
well, and let me tell you what happened.
that's
Guess what God does to good partnerships?
what's that?
He just takes it to the freaking moon. We are up 400% since 2019.
Wow.
We started a creative agency. Our profits are up 72%.
Okay, so 400%. So where was the shift though? Like,
so this is what happened. Shelly came on board and I told her a dream that I had. The dream was, okay, we've been serving these brands for years now, telling stories. And what I realized is we were telling better stories about their brands than they were. Because when you're busy doing the thing you do, okay, you don't have time to think about, what's my brand doing? Am I telling the story? Do people know the problems we're solving? Like, how are we solving those problems? How can we make people's lives better? What gaps are we standing in? So I said, I really want to start a creative storytelling agency that lives inside of the Good Grit brand, because we have, at that time, I had curated over 4 million story words. I am an expert storyteller.
Sure.
And so she was like, great, so stop talking about it and go do it. Oh, and by the way, I hired a creative director that we can't afford, so I suggest you sell something. And I was like, and she's just like that awesome.
Yeah.
And so she brought on Shivani, who's now a partner too in Good Grit. And Shivani was the creative director for the Zac Brown band for many years. She branded like almost everything that he had. And then she also did like tour branding, and she had worked for a big agency in Atlanta. So we got her, and then we hired a couple more people. The creative agency outgrew the magazine in 6 months from a revenue perspective. And
In 6 months?
In 6 months.
Wow.
It was
No overhead, though?
lots of overhead.
In the creative?
Well, I mean, think about it.
Payroll, though.
Payroll, there was overhead. But it didn't matter, because what we learned to do is say, we now treat Good Grit Magazine as just a client of Good Grit Agency. And our specialty is bringing your brand story, either birthing a brand story, birthing the name of your company. We do everything from ideation to actually rebrands, branding, telling those stories through the editorial lens, which is the most powerful way to tell a story. I mean, people want to read and lean in if you're just telling them a really good story.
Right.
And so we started doing that. It outgrew the magazine in 6 months. The pandemic happened. We were like, okay, well, the magazine's dying. The agency's taken off. No big deal. We called every advertiser when the pandemic happened. My director of sales called every advertiser we had, and this is what I told her to tell them: don't pay, but don't pull out. They all wanted to pull out. Every advertiser we had, except for 2, wanted to pull out. And I said, tell them they don't have to pay, but not to pull out. Run their ads. Stay consistent. This is a long game.
Sure.
And none of them left.
Okay, so let me go back. So
Okay.
you're still running this magazine. Did you miss any issues? Didn't miss any issues.
Well, we went from 6 to 4.
This is an interesting COVID-like concept. Okay, so you didn't miss any issues, but you told all these advertisers, says, don't pay me your $1, $2, $5, $10, $15,000, whatever it is. Don't pay, but you still ran the issue.
Yeah.
You still ran the magazine.
And they all paid.
Wow.
You know why?
Why?
Because no one else did that. No one else said, hey, you've been so loyal
We'll
to
stick
us.
by you.
We'll stick by you. We know this is hard. We know you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
That's okay. Let us help you. By the way, we started a creative brand agency. And we were able to pick up clients that way. So that happened. We didn't miss any issues.
So you probably did better during 2020 than...
So I'm going to tell y'all the most tragic, well, this is a great Lindsay story. So in 2020, we survived.
Yeah.
That was just the goal.
Okay,
Survive,
got it,
okay?
yeah.
In 2021, in February of 2021, I had a CFO who shall remain nameless.
Sure.
That really was good at telling me what the problems were, but not really good at telling me the
Solutions.
solutions.
Hate that.
And it was bad. And that's not my gift. My gift is not to be a CFO. My gift is to build relationships
Yep.
and solve problems.
And lead. Yep.
Yeah. And so in February 2021, we had $14,000 debt on a credit card, and we had $21,000 debt on a credit card and $7,000 in the bank. And this guy's like, you're not going to make it. And I called Lindsay, who I had met through a mutual friend, and was like, hey, this is what I'm paying this guy. Will you help me? Like, I need somebody who will come in here and tell me what I need to do. Because I'll go do it. I don't care what it is.
Yeah. When you say, tell me what I need to do, you were meaning from a financial part. You wanted Lindsay to come in. So we all know Lindsay. She's wonderful, owns Empire. She does our books.
She's amazing.
Okay, so you said, hey, come in here and help me.
Just tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
How can we fix this? That was 21, February 21. The end of 21, we netted $200,000. Netted.
So the CFO had no freaking clue what they were doing.
None. And Lizzie said, hey girl, here's what you need to do. I'm going to get out of your way and I'm going to take care of these things and you just go do it. Help me with my collections, help me with like streamlining all of the expenses, understanding what were we spending money on we shouldn't have been spending money on, like what was bleeding versus what was, but really, again, it was like the partnership. Like good partnership just yields incredible fruit.
She's made so much of a difference in us because it's like I had a guy named Mike McCraw. Mike works for Founders. I don't know if you know him. He's wonderful. But I was meeting with him just about business stuff, and he's like, "Hey, you got to have a better grasp on your numbers." I knew we were making money,
Right.
but he's like, "You got to know percentages. You got to know these things." And so I knew Lindsay from back in the day,
best.
but then he's like, "Hey, you need to like go down this path with Lindsay," and I did. And it's been wonderful. I got a meeting with her in an hour, 40 minutes.
Okay. Lindsay is the best.
She is.
Tell me I feel like we're bad
No,
on
you're
time.
good. You're fine.
That is what happened with Lindsay. We are up now, so this was the shift that needed
That
to
was in
happen.
21.
21, what we did was we stopped looking at the magazine as a separate business, and we started treating the magazine like a client of the agency. That's it.
So the nuts and the bolts question I have is that the agency is what's making, quote, the
Well,
money.
it used to be, and now.
Now
the magazine is up 36% from last year,
Wow.
and it made just as much money as the agency did.
That's so good.
So
Because you got a great agency working
great
with that.
agency.
Working
If
with
y'all need an agency,
Yeah, exactly.
know somebody. And I think
When you say agency, you mean like an ad agency, marketing agency, what okay,
branding,
all that stuff.
branding,
Okay.
storytelling. I mean, I think dissemination.
And it's
marketing. It's called Good Grit.
Good Grit, okay.
Yeah. And goodgritagency.com is where you can find that. We have some really incredible clients.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some great case studies on there of things we've done, and we're really proud of that work. And it's very meaningful. I mean, to help somebody who's doing this great work like what you're doing to better tell that story so that you can reach more people that you can serve.
Yeah.
And so that's been really fun. And I think you asked me something off camera.
Okay.
Ask me again.
I don't know what I did. What
You
did I ask?
asked me, would I do it again?
Okay. So 6 years, no money. Would you start and do Good Grit again?
So, caveat, do I get to start Good Grit knowing what I know, or I don't get to know? I got to just grind.
Knowing what you know. No, I think that's fair. Knowing what
Yeah.
you know. Because at some point, here's what's going to happen. You're 39, so you've got a lot of people that you're going to mentor and lead and talk to for the rest of your life. Someone's going to come up to you, a 22-year-old Laura is going to come up to you and say, I want to start a magazine in fill in the blank.
Yeah.
What are you going to tell them?
Well, I tell them don't do it. I mean, I tell them don't do it unless you have a blank checkbook, okay? Or unless you're so niche down and you already have big relationships that you know you can leverage, because if that's the case, I can help you build a playbook that you can run and you can make money. The thing that happened to Good Grit that I didn't know was we just cast too wide of a net. And over the years, we've learned to hone in and be very niche on mainly what we do is we do evocative storytelling, which is awesome, but we live in the travel world. Like, most of what we're doing is we're giving you a permission slip to go visit a small city you didn't know was amazing in the South. And
When you say cast too wide of a net, I don't understand. Do you mean cast too wide of a net geographically, or cast too wide of a net of like we were doing too much in our magazine?
both.
Okay.
So we're still a lifestyle publication. So you can still get a great recipe in Good Grit, and you can still see all these like cool places you need to go. But when I say too wide of a net from a content perspective, what I've learned is the people who want to invest in Good Grit to tell their stories are primarily tourism-oriented people, right? So the bulk of our business is going to be around cities across the South, right? And then everything else should feed into that. And that's what we did. Geographically, we spread ourselves too thin on how we wanted to distribute.
Sure.
We wanted to be there was a time we were in 48 states. We had more subscribers in New York and LA than we did in Georgia at one time.
That's crazy. And you're a Southern lifestyle magazine.
Exactly. But the South is cool.
I'll say this.
Yeah.
Okay. A friend of mine started a sticker company.
Okay.
He owns a coffee shop. He started a sticker company and is making crap tons of money selling stickers that have Southern sayings on it. And he told me this. So look, I saw him. So we used to live in Cookeville. He still lives there. But I saw him at Market in Atlanta.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm like, is this really making money? He goes, bro. So much. And I'm like, how? He goes, the South is a brand in and of itself.
It is.
And when he said that, my light bulb went off and goes, he is freaking right.
Well, not only that, this is what there were two things that were happening when I moved to Birmingham. There was a revival happening in a lot of southern cities all across the United States. Like, all of the old things were cool again.
Sure.
People didn't want to live in like drywalled places. They were like, give me exposed brick and a $600 electric bill. I love it. You know what I mean? And so I think that there was that. I mean, right now, if you even think about the nostalgia that record sales are higher now than they were in the 60s.
Nuts.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Polaroids, all of these old things made new again, made cool again. I mean, the fact that the 90s are back in style is just devastating to me.
Bonkers.
I hate it.
Me
I'm
too.
like, there's nothing good about it. It shouldn't have come back. It's horrible.
No.
But there's cycles in those things.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that from a Southern culture perspective, people are enamored with wanting to understand it. And people who are from here are really excited about people being excited about the South who don't live here. And so we act as a vehicle, and Garden and Gun and Southern Living both do this too.
Right.
But we didn't have $100 million like Garden and Gun did. That's how much of a capital investment. My capital investment is under $2 million.
That's crazy.
It's insane, but we made it 8 years. And now we're in a really profitable place. And it did take a long time, but I wouldn't be able to mentor people. I wouldn't have the relationship with God that I have. I certainly wouldn't have a healthy marriage and a healthy relationship with my children.
Right.
And I don't think I'd be the type of leader that I am.
Wow. Okay, so here's where we are.
Okay.
This has been absolutely fascinating to me. But I've got a list of questions that I want to ask.
Okay, go for it.
But the problem is,
we don't have any time.
we don't have any time.
I know.
So you've got to go, I've got to go. But I think the best thing for us to do is to do another one of these.
Are you serious?
And yes, but here's why I say that. I want to say that because I want to be more technical. I want to ask technical questions.
Okay.
So that people can understand, like, there's so many things that you said that people don't understand.
Yeah, well, especially people are like, well, how did you live if you were losing
Exactly.
money? And when you don't...
So explaining those things is critical. But like we haven't even talked about your husband and what he does and how y'all do life together and things like that.
And the balance and the boundaries and all those things, yes.
So here's what we're going to do. I promise, because this is I'm truly fascinated. If I'm fascinated, I know people will be too. Let's give this thing however long, and let's have you back on so that we can get more details of what you do, because it's fascinating. 'Cause I didn't know any of that information.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will do this again for sure.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.